Okay, good evening to everyone. Um, haven't seen you guys in a while. I hope you guys are staying safe in this uh, COVID-19. This lecture that's taking place now is contemporary issues in criminal justice. So, for those of you who might join in that were supposed to be in the drugs and crime course, you check your calendar and you'll see it was at 6:30 that I did that lecture today. That starting next week, then you'll see me at 8:30. So, so if those of you who are in, if you want to stay in, that's fine. I don't care. But the live lecture is for contemporary issues in criminal justice, and we are in week 6, guys. So make sure that you um, understand this. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get this lecture won't be very long. So let's go through and let's take a look at the topics here. You will see that we are at week 3. We've had a week 1 lecture and we've had a week 3 lecture. So now we're at week 6. The next lecture will be week 8 and then week 10. And then, of course, the course ends on the 19th of June. All right. So let's take a look at the announcement for the week. This week, we're going to deal with interviewing within criminal justice and how to prepare for interviewing. And you know in this class already that there's no textbook. So you're going to deal with module 6 um, and what I'll talk about in this lecture. Remember I said from the beginning that the course is more like an independent studies course and that I monitor and I do grade your assignments and make sure that you complete those assignments as well. Okay. And so tonight I will be talking about interviewing within criminal justice. The discussion post, initial post was due yesterday, actually a couple of days ago, in answering interview questions, and then your reply posts are due Saturday. And then your written assignment, interviewing in justice, that will be due this Sunday coming up at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then you know about my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. So now let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, in the course calendar, we are here at the 14th today, and then you see your assignment, the module for Monday, this past Monday. Don't worry about reading chapters 12, 14, because there is no textbook in this course. And answering interview questions was due Tuesday and reply post Sunday. And then assignment is due the 7th. Okay, I'm going to talk about that more in detail. And then your key phrase that I give you. And then we're also going to talk about the following week as well tonight because the next lecture will not take place until we are in week 8. So for week 7, there is an assignment that I do want to talk to you about so you can be sure that you get that done right, because there are always some challenges with it. So let's go into the module itself. Okay, let's see the assignments. Okay, interviewing. So you're going to do a 1 to 2 page paper, and you're going to prepare 8 potential questions. Now, make sure that you have citations in the body and references at the end. I've already shared that before, over and over and over, about all written assignments, making sure that you understand that many of you lose 5 points because you don't have both citations and references. But this must be a 1 to 2 page paper. 1 page means 1 page, double space, Romans 12, and make sure that you have cite your sources, and remember you have a reference page as well as a cover page. Okay, and then here is the rubric. Click on this and you see your rubric, and your rubric tells you identify a position in the field of interest, and 8 possible interview questions and appropriate responses. Now, this shouldn't be a real short thing or a one-liner or two-liner. Make sure you have detailed questions and answers to those questions, and then meets the 1 page requirement minimum. Okay, and then your APA. Remember the APA sources. Make sure you have as well. All right, now let's go to the due date, which is Sunday the 17th. Now, back your discussion post dealing with answering interview questions, and then share an interview question that you've encountered in your own career. And I've seen some of you have done pretty good with that. All right. And then your live classroom phrase, which I give you, or word. Okay. So now let's talk about the topic. So today we're going to talk about interviewing in criminal justice. And we're going to respond to these objectives that we have here. And so, first of all, you need to understand that it is very important for you to be aware that there is a difference in interviewing for justice studies fields than for others. For example, in most instances, when we're dealing interviewing in justice studies, we're first of all looking for people who are able to communicate, and you demonstrate very strongly in the interview of your ability to be able to speak. You might also, at some times, be required to produce some written communication that you have concerning the field that you're interviewing in, whether it's a police officer, probation officer, parole officer, whether it's a um, investigator, corrections officer, a jail officer. The point of the matter is, all throughout the line where you're dealing with um, justice studies, you're going to be required to demonstrate good communication skills. As we talked about before, throughout this whole school process here of our um, critical skills, of our transferable skills. One of them is communication, written and oral, because you're going to need to be able to do this when you arrive in your job. You're going to write reports. You're going to have to be able to establish an understanding about the ability to be able to have good grammar and be able to, at the same time, be able to speak in the English language to communicate with people. You're also going to have to learn um, and some of the interview techniques and questions that they'll ask you go to integrity. Um, we need very ethical people hired in justice studies, because you remember who you're serving. Your your customers generally are people who have made poor choices in life. And so your role and responsibility is to help those individuals by, as I talk about my corrections people, to be able to rehabilitate those individuals, them going in a new direction in life. So you have to, first of all, be a role model and be able to demonstrate that to people. Um, when you're dealing in law enforcement, for example, dealing with the ethics, I tell people all the time, I don't like that code of silence. I don't like, because that can get you in trouble. Is like, for example, trying to write a report to protect your partners and yourself. No, write the report the way that the incidents, and you won't go wrong in those situations. So the ethical considerations are going to be very strong in terms of considering the process. Um, when going through interviewing, one of the things that I did when I applied for positions is I would sit down and I would write down every possible question that I thought that the person I'm going to interview with would ask me. And I wrote answers to those and became to a point where they became a part of who I was. So therefore, when I went into the interview, I wasn't going in there, as we say, cold turkey, and I was prepared to deal with possible responses that might come about because of that. So um, it is a different world of interviewing for a position as a as I was telling them, as a I don't know, secretary or something other than um, a person who's going to, as they say, operate in the justice system, the justice program. You're going to be interviewed heavily towards your background and about who you are, and like I said, your integrity and ethics. And there will be questions that will be brought out to test, maybe given a hypothetical, to see how you would respond under certain scenarios and situations. And most of my students are pretty good with coming out with uh, those questions. So as we talk about discussing the common justice studies interview questions, one of the common questions is, what would you do under a certain situation? And you'd be given a hypothetical, and then you'd have to give an answer. And those answers that you give are to let the person who's interviewing you determine uh, your ethics and your professionalism and your ability to be able to follow the processes and procedures of an organization. It is always good when you are dealing with interviews is to study the organization. Now that we have webs, we didn't have that when I was coming up, but you have websites and you have various places you can go and find out about agencies and organizations. You can research the field, not just within that particular agency, but in how they operate across the board. And so you can anticipate questions that are going to come uh, to see how much you really know about that company. Now, this might be something that's in common with interviewing for any position, but it is very, very, very important for you to understand the organization that you're interviewing for. For example, when I was applying for a position at this school, okay, as a teacher, one of the things that was asked me about was about the organization, and I was able to elaborate on their questions because I did my due diligence, investigating and finding out everything I could about Rasmussen College in the area where I knew I was going to work, not necessarily outside the area, but I was being hired for business law. But then when I got ready to apply for the state program coordinator in the School of Justice Studies, I began to think more like the questions that you would consider as common justice studies interview questions, because those were questions that I wowed the person I interviewed with. In fact, I even developed a strategic plan to implement some of the things that I thought would benefit the program, would help our justice study students to become prepared, to become professionals when they left the school. The point of the matter is that I did my research. And so my common questions went, like I said, to ethics, whether or not I understood what the goal of the organization was in terms of me taking a job and how I would fit in the team. Those are questions that were asked of me so that I could give them some positive feedback. And uh, and you don't just shoot this off the top of your head. There are people who find themselves going into these interviews and they don't do very well, because I can tell you this, that when you go into an interview, especially for a criminal justice position, everything that you do, maybe even in that facial expressions and everything, how you elaborate on answering questions. Are you dancing around answers? Are you hemming and hawing when given answers? Uh, it's not going to get you a job. Okay. We must be at the top in order to be able to be hired as a criminal justice individuals. After all, do you want a police officer who can't answer a simple question that is based on foundational integrity? What would you do if you're a police officer applying for a police officer's position if your partner asked you to write in a report something different happened? And you're going to have to answer that, because guess what? You're going to possibly face that situation. Now, some people tend to think that if you give the truthful answer, that they might look at you as a potential person who's not going to be a part of the quote old boys club. You know, you're not going to go along with the things that want done. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Integrity, following processes, um, obeying what the law says, then you're going to have to understand. Your questions will be relating to the law, even as basic as um, criminal law, whether you're dealing in corrections, probation. Um, so, yep, those are the kinds of things that you find yourself. You know, we had a meeting at work today, and yeah, integrity. Yeah, integrity is an important thing because you have to be able to trust the people that are in your um, work positions. And guess what? When you are out there operating, uh, particularly let's use law enforcement for a minute, your partner has to be able to have your back. However, you have to also recognize and understand that you don't want to put upon your partner to do something that could land you both either in the unemployment line and or jail, uh, committing perjury, and those kinds of situations. Um, you might find yourself in a situation where you will be asked if you were to be asked, and this might apply to corrections and jails, for a favor by one of the inmates, would you do that favor? And then you'll have to elaborate on it and give the details. So then what they're testing you on then is to see how strong you are, because based upon cases that I had even as a lawyer where individuals who were correction officers or jailers who tried to do favors, they lost their jobs because of the fact that they jeopardized the facility and the lives of the people who work there and the people who visit there, and then the inmates themselves. So those are the kind of things. But yes, it's absolutely critical. Integrity. It's essential. That's why you guys, you recall in my classes, always talk about the ethics, as we talk about that as being one of the transferable skills because of the fact that an unethical student is an unethical professional, and an unethical professional is a short-lived individual in that profession, and or potentially one who could find themselves behind bars. So the assignment that you're going to have this week, as we close in this section, is to prepare interview questions and answers that relate to your field. We just got through talking about that a few minutes ago. That relates to whatever it is. If you're going corrections, anticipate the questions that could be asked of you if you were applying for the position. Put yourself in the position as interviewed or the interviewee of the interviewer. What question would you ask if someone was applying for the positions? And I can tell you this, if you be honest and straightforward and deal with it appropriately, when you walk into the interview, you will be able to just like smoothly respond to the questions and what individuals are being interviewed, they're asking for. Um, it's a there's no, as I say, there's no as we right or wrong answers to some of these questions, but it's relative because it's going to depend upon the interviewer as to what they think is right, or what they think is good or bad about how you answered a specific question. And you can again, best be prepared before that interview by sitting down and quietly, and I'd say pray myself. That's what I'd say. I think Brother Presley would agree with me on that one. And then um, pray when you're preparing. Pray when you give the answers. Now that's us. But everybody don't want to roll that way. That's okay. You go your way, I go my way. But I got news for you. My success ratio is pretty high because I have a little extra help. But I ain't gonna start preaching because I could do that without taking a text. But but at any rate, the point of the matter is that what I do want you to do is stop and put, and I keep saying it over and over because it's so critical. Put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer as the interviewee before you go into the interview. And if you are able to do that, I guarantee you, no matter what questions that they come up with, if they come up with a question during the interview that you didn't anticipate, that means then you've number one didn't know the position that you were applying for, because you should know about it. You should know details about it. You might learn some history about it, be able to share that with them while you're talking to them. Um, Talk about some things that you think that could enhance the organization, or uh, some other thing that they will attempt to question you on is your ability to operate as a me, myself, and I, as a team person. That's really big in interviews because of the fact that um, we operate on the basis of team. We talked about this during our academic, not academic, but our critical skills and transferable skills. But you're going to be working as a team. So you're going to work with individuals who are detectives, if you're a police officer. You're going to work with people who are forensic scientists. You're going to work with lawyers, prosecution, and defense. You're going to work with all kinds of individuals, MDs. You're going to work with psychiatrists, psychologists, sociologists, and other clinicians and people that. So you're gonna be expected to be a team person. Um, Most criminal justice organizations that I know of, I don't know of any that operate like Andy and Barney. Even they operated as a team, but I don't know too many that operate the Lone Ranger syndrome. But even somebody brought to my attention, they said, well, the Lone Ranger had Tonto. So there's always somebody working together on that team. So y'all heard the old adage, there's no what in team. You know what that adage is? There's no what in team. Do you know what that is? Well, it's there's no I in team. You can't spell team by putting an I in there. It's TEAM. That's right. There's it's not you put an I in there, you messed it up. The point I'm just trying to say is you begin to think collectively as you proceed and get ready for that interview. And so those are some of the things that I think that you might want to consider. Remember, this course is designed to prepare you for when you leave here, so that when you do go into the real world and operate in the real world, you're able to effectively be able to proceed forth. And so this week, we dealt with the issue of dealing with interviewing. So now, before I come back and give the key phrase, I want to go to module 7. which kind of feeds into Module 6. And I want to deal with the assignment. And this specifically want to deal with. The discussion I don't have to deal with. And this students mess up and they don't get it. And I know what's going to happen. It's going to happen every time. They're going to come to me and says, I could not do a video. Well, the assignment calls for developing a short video that demonstrates job interview for your criminal justice position. Put into some of the things that we just got through talking about in week. Then in a one-page summary, the contents of your video, write about that. And then you're going to have citations and references and so forth. So be sure to include in your explanation of how you demonstrate good versus poor communication and how each one plays a part in the job interview. We just got through talking about that. Now, so you're supposed to create a video. The second sentence is what I want students to pay attention to. And that is paragraph, I should say. If you are unable to create your own video, notify the faculty member as soon as possible. As an alternate video source, you can share a link to an online video that demonstrates good versus poor communication. You do not have to notify me that you're having trouble doing your own video. You don't have to do that because I'm giving, yes, you can. You can use another person. But if you are unable to create it, I'm giving you permission now to use an alternate source from a link online that you might find. So if you're not creating your own. But see, here's the thing. The question that was asked is, can you interview somebody else? Well, once again, there are going to be students who would tell you that trying to put that 2-minute to 3-minute video and the content and upload it so that it can be graded and then have that written assignment is sometimes pretty challenging because of the systems that they have for that. So many students end up going to YouTube and they will write about a video that found that was an example of good versus poor behavior. Okay. And interviewing, and you try to use videos that demonstrate an interview in the area that you're seeking to be in or a criminal justice position. The key thing I kept telling you from the beginning of this course is try to stick with the topic on the area that you ultimately hope to work in as a professional after you graduate. So you have my permission to use the alternate video source, okay? Video that's already been created, but then you'll have to write about that. You're going to have to reference that as well. All right? Any questions? Okay. Here's the rubric. Same thing I just said. Original video demonstrating good versus poor. Alternate, share an online link. See, I already am including that in the rubric because I'm given permission. Explain why examples are good or bad. And then you follow the normal. Make sure it's 1 page at least. 1 to 2 pages. But 1 page at least with the cover page. Citations. Somebody said, well, wait a minute, how do I do citations? In the body of the paper, the sources that you use, and then include it as a reference on the reference page. That's all. Very easy. And have your cover page and like I said, that's the APA format. So that's the rubric right there, which mirrors what I just said a few minutes ago. All right. So that's that assignment. Okay. And then you do your discussion post, overcoming barriers to effective communication. And so you follow these instructions in the way you normally do your initial post Tuesday and your reply post Thursday. So consistent with the topic that you're dealing with here, you got to make sure that you develop professional communication skills and dealing with that. And then there's a little piece in right here that you can take a look at that as well. And it gives you some stuff. And I've already talked about all this stuff in here, so I'm not going to go over it. But you can go over it, and it will help you also to get the juices flowing when it comes to getting the assignment done. And even that even operates for week 6 as well as for week 7. So that's it for me. And so now I'm going to give you a key that you need to just give me. Any suggestions? Any suggestions? Nope. How about nope. How about this? Just remember this. This what the topic of this is criminal justice interview. That's it. That's what I want for this course as a key. And you give me that. All right. So just remember next week, there is no lecture for this. Okay. Um, so that's because I showed you earlier, we have weeks 1, 3, 6, 8, and 10 as lectures. And I will send out the information with that. So with that, I'm going to terminate and say good night. It's been a long day for me. I've had a lot of stuff to do today. So I'm going to say good night. And I'll see you in Contemporary Issues in Criminal Justice 2 weeks from today at 8:30 p.m. So good night. Stay safe out there.